podcast. I am Philip Lanos, and today we are with Joe Endoso, a seasoned executive and entrepreneur in the investment banking and fintech sectors. And he's currently the chief revenue officer and board member at LinkTo, a fintech company enabling systematic access by individuals into investments in the leading private tech companies. Joe holds an MBA from Wharton School and a BS from George Washington University. Joe, how you doing today?
Great, Phil. Looking forward to our discussion and feeling really privileged to be your guest. Thank you.
Same, man. You know, I was just saying earlier as we got to know each other, one of my glaring weaknesses in life is my understanding of finance and how it relates to me. That's definitely like, I'll openly admit to that. So I have to ask, has this always been a strength of yours, or is it something you took upon yourself to improve and push forward in life?
Actually, it's the latter, right? So I kind of, grew up not really learning very much about economics or finance or any of that stuff. I guess it wasn't something that my mom and dad, were particularly interested in teaching me about. So I had to sort of figure it all out on my own, and part of that was just getting educated in college a little about it, but most of it was just learning, in my career, right, as a banker. So I learned a lot of stuff in the course of basically doing it.
Amazing. And so did you start off your career sort of like you worked at like a local bank and then slowly went up? Or did all this come about like in college, you eventually found your way into some kind of internship, which led to higher and higher roles at investment firms?
Yeah, no, my story was super crazy, Phil. So because it wasn't like an area that I had learned much about or, experience, right, from growing up. When I finished school, I actually didn't have a clear idea what the heck I wanted to do. What I had a clear idea of was what I didn't want to do. And basically that was what my dad wanted me to do. I didn't want to do. So that was like the only direction I had. So I started applying basically for all the jobs that he didn't want me to do. One of them was to be was for a training program in this banking firm, right? So I apply, and it turned out that it was really bad timing, because the economy was pretty much going, into a recession at the time. And so within 2 weeks of my applying, they came back and said, "Hey, listen, we're really sorry, but we're canceling the training program this year."
Wow.
Because we're actually letting people go, right? We're not bringing in a new group of people. And so I was really bummed. And I said, "Well, don't you have any other jobs? I mean, I don't care like what it is. I'll do, anything. I just want to learn." Right. And so I still remember the guy that interviewed me to this day. I mean, the guy's name was Gene Pulliam. And I remember his name because he was the guy that basically gave me that break. Right. And he said, "Look, Joe, we've got a job. Basically, it's as a scrub, just basically a clerk on the trading desk for the guy that trades government bonds. And you're way overqualified for that, right? And it doesn't pay that well. And it's kind of a boring, clerical kind of a job." And I said, "You know what? I don't care. I don't care what you pay me. I don't care what the job is. I'll learn. I'll figure things out. I'll make my way. Just please give me a shot." And, I think his first impulse was basically not, because he thought, well, this kid is going to, go in and leave 2 months after that because he'll be disillusioned. But he took a chance. He said, "What the heck?" And he hired me. So I went in and did the job. And, the job itself was exactly as he described it. It was just routine, boring as all hell. And I probably learned everything I needed to learn within, the first 2.5 months. But the thing about it was that I was surrounded by people that were doing other things, trading, making investment decisions. And so I'd pick up stuff like it was osmosis, right? And so that made up for the fact that the actual job I was doing was not real great because I was learning all this stuff from the people around me, just taking it all in, talking to people, sitting down with them, asking them questions and trying to learn as much as I could informally, right? And then something happened that was kind of like a minor miracle. It was the thing that really gave me a big break. And it was the fact that Gene had gone to the same college as me. So he was a much older alum. And every month he would get the college alum magazine. Well, 2 months after I joined that job, the magazine did a feature on me because one of the things I did when I finished school was I delivered the valedictory address, right, at my
Oh,
commencement,
wow.
right? So they had this article where they reprinted my speech and they had a picture of me. And he saw that and he loved the speech and he got super excited. He had no idea that he'd hired this kid that had done. So
You
apparently what
undersold
happened was,
yourself.
yeah, but it was all happenstance, man. I mean, it wasn't like it was planned. So
Right.
Gene goes to his best buddy, who happened to be the vice chairman of the firm. And he said, Frank, look at, this is the kid that I just hired. I didn't realize this guy. And Frank read the speech and he loved it too. So I'm sitting at the trading desk that one day, Phil. I still remember it like it was yesterday, and the phone rings. And this gal's on the other end, and she says, Mr. Endoso, would you be free on Thursday at noon to have lunch with Frank Lyons? And I thought to myself, freaking heck, this has got to be a prank. And I stand up, I'm looking, I raise my head above my cubicle. I'm looking around because, you know, these trading areas, I mean, everybody's like a freaking prankster, right?
Right.
And we're pulling stunts like this all day long on each other. So I'm thinking somebody's doing this to me. This has got to be a joke. And so but I don't see anybody laughing or giggling. So I'm thinking, and I say to the lady, is this a joke, ma'am? And she
Right.
says, no, I'm so-and-so. I'm his executive assistant. I'm inviting you to have lunch with him. He wants to have lunch with you on Thursday. So I said, okay, fine, I'll do that. Thank you very much. And then I hang up. I still think this has got to be a prank. I walk around like trying to, you know, figure out who's pulling this on me. And I couldn't. So I go to Gene and I said, Gene, somebody's trying to prank me. Like I got the call and he says, no, Joe, it's real. I loved your speech. I got the magazine and I took it up to Frank and he loved it too. And he wanted to have lunch with you. So
Wow.
I swear to God, Phil, on Thursday, I take the elevator up to the top floor. There's this like beautiful office that takes up half the floor with a table all laid out and, fancy plates, fancy food and all of that. I mean, this is like way above my pay grade, man, right? I'm just like this kid straight out of college. I mean, I've never come to anything like that in my life. And he is this wonderful, gracious guy, spends 2 hours with me. We have a wonderful conversation, asked me about my background and everything. I'm an immigrant, by the way, Phil. So, I mean, I didn't come to this country till the age of 17, right?
I see.
So all of this is very foreign to me in the literal sense of the word as well, not an experience I'd had. And then he says at the end, he says, okay, Joe, I think this is really fantastic. I've really enjoyed your company. I'd like you to report to Ellen Martin in the investment department on Monday. You have a new job now. You're getting promoted.
Wow.
And I was like, really? Wow. So that's what happened. I moved into a job where I got to learn about investments and portfolio management. Several months after I joined, thinking I was just going to be a clerk for the government bond trader, right? But it was all happenstance. And the thing it taught me at a very early age is that I'd rather be lucky than smart. I got super lucky. And if you project a positive attitude and you want to learn and you're just out there hungry for opportunity is going to come your way. I can't tell you if it's going to happen next week or next month or next year or how long you're going to have to wait, but I can damn well guarantee it will happen.
There's so many things I love about this story and the way it was presented. The first being the thing that stood out the most to me was your willingness to be in the right place that you wanted to be in. You knew the time would come somehow, but the right place was going to be important. And you knew, I mean, you had this notion that, anything my father doesn't want me to do, I'm going to do. I'm sure you also had to some degree, some interest in it. Even if it was going to be boring, there had to be something that said, maybe this is something I can do. I imagine, now I could be wrong, but I imagine to some degree you were like, yeah, financial something. And so
Yeah.
I'm just glad that you put yourself in that position, because most people won't even do that. They'll say, oh no, why would I even? So you're right. I would personally agree with you. I would rather be lucky than smart, because more often than not, there are a lot of smart people who are very unlucky and don't ever get the chance to do things. And oftentimes, if you really know your chances, as most smart people do, they end up not pursuing too many ambitious goals because they figure a way to talk themselves out of it, because that's what smart people do. And
Yeah.
I've often said, most people who work for bosses and they're like, I'm smarter than my boss, why am I working for them? Well, there's two reasons for that. One, I always say is, well, I mean, yeah, that's why they hired you, because you're smart. That's the first one. And the second one, well, they didn't know what their chances were. That's why they took the risks. And so I love your story, its origins, and everything about it. And even the fact that 2 months later, they realize you've been giving these badass speeches, and I can feel the energy coming from you just when I speak with you. It's very conversational. It's very personable. I believe that you are able to, similar to me, create a large amount of trust really early on, because of how honest and humble you approach life. And I think it's a key quality that many people are afraid to be that way, because it leaves you very vulnerable.
Yeah.
But I believe that, just based off getting to know you off this one story so far, there's a lot here that is natural leadership quality. I imagine once you hit this new floor, you got to know the whole team pretty quickly. What was that like? Because now I want to start moving in towards where we are today, where you're the
Yeah.
chief revenue officer and board member at LinkTo, right? Because I
Yeah.
want to know, like, I'm sure there was a few companies or this or that you went through, but what's the revised, abridged version of what this looks like? From there, you make it to this place where you start learning about investment portfolios and everything like that. And how do you get to LinkTo from there?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good question. So the common thread through all of that, Phil, is that, just like with that first act of kind of defying, if you will, my dad's wishes by going out my own way, I realized as the older I got, that was a very deep streak in me, which is that, I just don't like doing things just the way they are
Yeah.
and doing it because everybody says so, right? I'm kind of this natural rebel, I guess, right?
Same
Which
here.
actually, if you're an entrepreneur, there are two qualities that are essential. One is that sense of not wanting to do things the way everybody says it's got to be done, right? And the other is something that you've got in spades, Phil. It's just authenticity. You got to be true to yourself, right? Don't pretend to be somebody else that you're not. Just be true to yourself, because if people can get that about you and that you're real, you're true to yourself, they'll come your way. They'll want to be with you. They'll trust you. And business is fundamentally about creating trust relationships, right? Before you sell any kind of a product or service, people have got to trust you, right? You have hundreds of thousands of followers. Why? Because they trust you. As simple as that, right? But getting people to trust you isn't that simple, right? Because like you say, it involves certain things like being authentic and genuine that require you maybe to be a little vulnerable, right? So for me, that streak of not wanting to be like everybody else. So I spent about half of my professional life as a very kind of institutional, conventional investment banker, right? And within the scope of that industry, I tried to always do new things, try to be involved in creating new products, find new businesses, find new markets for the firms I worked for. But I got to the point where that wasn't enough. I needed to be on my own. I didn't want to be one of 20,000 people in a firm, right? And frankly, there are a lot of things in sort of investment banking that, at the standpoint of my personal values, I just found more and more distasteful, right? And I wanted to do a business and build a firm that was more sort of in line, right, with those values and those principles. So I left the last firm I worked for. I was the global head in charge of the entire semiconductor business for the technology investment bank.
Wow.
And I had lots of people, reporting to me around the world and all of that stuff. We were the most, profitable segment of the tech investment bank for a long time. But I wanted to do something that was truly about me, right? And about my partners. So I left that large firm and I started up my own little boutique firm with a bunch of friends and partners. And we set up shop in San Francisco to kind of do this thing that at the time was relatively funky, which was we were focused on doing deals in these emerging markets that at that point were considered to be either crazy, dangerous, or both, right? So one of those markets was the Arabian Gulf, the Middle East, right? So you can imagine after 9/11 what that was like,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
People thought that I was never going to come back alive and that the terrorists were going to ransom me, right? And, send my family, pieces of my fingers and my ears. And then later on, after we got successful doing that, we went into China, which at the time was also still an emerging market, right? And that worked out super well. I learned a tremendous amount just being on my own, because what I learned was if you don't have like a big name behind you, the only reason people are going to trust you enough to do business with you is you. It's about you. They have got to know and have got to trust Joe, same way that they know and trust Phil when they listen to you. So it was the same thing. I had to learn that, right? I had to learn how to do that. But we built a neat little business doing that. And I then sold that firm and started up another merchant banking firm that is still around in Washington, D.C. today, with some terrific guys as partners. But about, I want to say 5-6 years ago, Phil, I decided, after reading so much about fintech, right, the application of technology to disrupt traditional financial services businesses, I decided, you know what, I want to get involved in that, because that's the wave of the future. That's not like trying to remake something that's old and kind of make it newish. That's just creating something totally new. And I wanted to be part of that. So I got involved in a crypto startup. I don't know how many of your listeners are into crypto. And
Many.
that's,
Yeah.
that's a world that I immersed myself in. I loved. Unfortunately, we had a business plan that was probably too early for the market, right? So we built a product, but the people that we were supposed to buy it weren't ready yet, right? So we were a little too early. So I left that. And that's when I just, at the time, I discovered LinkTo. And see, with LinkTo, what I loved about LinkTo and the business we're building is that we're solving a problem that's relevant today. We can meet a need today. I don't have to worry about being too early, right? And so LinkTo is fundamentally about empowering little people. It's about democratizing this very, very niche category of assets, right? Which are basically the private shares of technology companies. So tech companies, before they do their IPO, before they go public, they're being funded by VCs, right?
Right.
The people that get to invest in them are institutions. They're venture capital firms. They're big family offices of oligarchs and billionaires. They're hedge funds. They're private equity firms. They're not individuals like you and me, right? Individuals like you and me, even though we might meet the accredited investor requirements of the SEC and technically are allowed to invest in those assets, it's really super hard to do it for a whole variety of reasons, right? And so what we wanted to do was make it really easy and simple and affordable, right? For regular people, not institutions, people, individual human beings, to make investments in this space. Because from an investment standpoint, Phil, these companies in their stock, they represent the fastest growing segment of the economy, and they represent the best investment returns of any class of assets in the last 25 years. And yet, the only people that actually have gotten to invest in them regularly aren't really people. They're funds, they're institutions, right? We wanted to make it available to people. And that's what we're doing at LinkTo. We're democratizing that space. And if you're a regular person, and as long as you can meet the requirements of the SEC for accredited investor, you can, the minimum investment on our platform today is $10,000, right? You can make an investment for $10,000 in any one of these companies. And as we scale our platform and we grow our investor base, we're going to make that minimum even lower over time. We're going to make it easier and easier for you to invest in this space.
That is really exciting. When I think about the implications of that, that's huge. And, knowing the background where you come from, and I have a very similar background in that respect, that's huge for people who are always looking for, like, how do I get leveled up? How do I step into a different tier of the economy and start to play at a different level? And often all people need is that opportunity, but they don't have it because X number of reasons, right? And I would say mostly an asynchronization of information, right? Access to information. And thank you for correcting me too. LinkTo, I was saying LinkTo, sorry about that, but LinkTo sounds like a really exciting company to not only be a part of, because there's this sense of purpose and mission, I can already tell, but also what it's doing is literally disrupting. And I've always had this belief, and correct me where I'm wrong here, that the finance world wants to keep people out of it. But the more I hear you say things about, like, your experience, the more people are investing in the market, the better it is. Is this true?
Yeah, it is. And the more different kind of people, that's the key,
I see.
right? So what we're doing is we're changing the market structure for these private assets, right? Because in the past, the only capital that was flowing to them was coming from these institutions. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get millions of small investors. Effectively, we're using technology to very efficiently put these people together, put their capital together, so we can go into that market, right? The same way we would like the institution. So even, we launched this platform, gosh, I mean, it's less than 2 years ago, late February of last year, Phil. And from that time to today, we've aggregated close to 70 million
That's
worth
amazing.
of capital from small investors, right? This is not Wall Street, this is Main Street, regular folks, right? That are saying, I'm going to take a portion of my savings and invest it in these pre-IPO tech companies, right? And in that same short period of time, we've made investments in about 26 companies, and of those 26, 3 have already gone public, and another 6 are in the process of going public. And we'll be generating, when I look at those 9 exits, the returns to our customers are on the low end about 1.5x, and on the high end about 13.5x.
Oh, wow.
Right. So we're in one of the hottest IPO markets in the history of the stock market, and we're giving our investment community members the opportunity to be part of that, right? To be able to get the same kind of returns that the institutions are getting.
What I love about this idea is that then it's not only people who can step into a market, piecing up together to become essentially almost like a fund, if you will, under the umbrella of LinkTo, or like sort of like it also means that there are companies that may otherwise have never gotten looked at by VCs, but now that we have a company that has aggregated funds that could potentially believe in certain companies that wouldn't have otherwise been able to find the funding they needed to keep cash flow going or what have you. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, eventually, I think we'll get to the point where we're big enough that we can do exactly what you're talking about, Phil. We'll effectively become, another source of funding, right, for those companies as they raise their growth capital.
I just love the theme that's running throughout this entire conversation of rebellion, disruption, of changing, of not leaving things the way they were and moving them forward. It's very entrepreneurial in a lot of ways. And it's funny because the story starts off in a very structured, sort of corporate, this is how we do it thing. And then you totally flip that on its head the minute you become head of a global distribution and say, I just can't sit still. I've got to do something different, something bigger. And I just love that insatiable drive in you. Do you find that follows you throughout your life in general, sort of in your habits? Do you wake up and you already have energy and you're ready to go? Or do you have to exercise and sort of get into it too? I'm trying to understand the entrepreneur Joe here.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I mean, I obviously, since I left, sort of conventional investment banking, Phil, and struck out on my own first, with my own little investment banking firm, and then now going into fintech, I've had to really hone that capability of, constantly pushing myself to think outside the box, right? That's the single biggest challenge. I think we're all, raised in a way to think inside the box, because that's how you survive in this world in many respects, right? You got to follow the rules, you got to obey the conventions, otherwise you stick out like a sore thumb, right? The Dutch have a saying that the tulip that rises above the tulip bed gets cut, right? So I think at a human level, it kind of goes counter to our training and the way we were raised to be thinking out of the box. But I've learned a lot being on my own that that's actually the key also to being a successful entrepreneur, is not to feel, that you're so constrained that you end up not being able to come up with innovative and creative ideas. And with LinkTo, I tell you, I've got the great fortune of I've learned a lot from our founder, right? So he and I are running this business and growing it together. But he is one of these guys that's just a born entrepreneur, right? He's always been on his own from his youngest days, so he's got that terrific sense of always thinking outside the box, and I've learned so much from him in that respect, right?
Joe, I have to ask, if people wanted to learn more about LinkTo and you specifically, where would they go for each of those? Is there a website, your social channel that you're active on, those kinds of things?
Yeah, well, look, you can go to our website, www.linkto.com, or better still, download the LinkTo app, right? It's on in the iStore. You can get it from the Google Android store. So if you've got an Apple phone or an Android phone, you can download the app, take a look at it, and if you qualify as an accredited investor, open an account and make your first investment and see what that feels like. What we're trying to do is make it a really simple and easy experience for the regular guy. You don't have to be a technology whiz to be able to use the investment platform.
No, I love this. I love this. And are you active on any social channels?
I've got a Telegram for a sort of a small group of our customers, Phil, that maybe constitute our top customer base.
Sure.
But LinkTo as a company, you'll find us on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. So yeah,
I know. I love that.
All of those places.
I love that, because that means if people become investors and choose to go forward in that direction, they can rest assured that they wouldn't have to necessarily make all the decisions without any information. It sounds like there's a club they get to join where they start to have these conversations about these companies that are on the path to going public, and they get to be a part of that journey and learn as well as from you as well as you from them. It's pretty exciting stuff. I really like
Yeah,
what you're doing
you
with
actually
LinkTo.
you actually said a really important thing there, Phil, that I'd like to touch on, because when we set out to do this startup, our vision wasn't just about building a technology platform that would allow for these investments. What we actually wanted to do was build a community of people that could come together, help each other, learn from each other, and become better investors and better people from that experience, right? So at LinkTo, other than just transacting on the platform, if you're a member, you can attend we have monthly educational seminars that we put on called LinkTo Learns, where we bring in speakers from different industries, right, to talk about their company or areas of interest, the sector that they're in. We have quarterly global investor conferences because our customers are worldwide.
Right.
And so these conferences run a whole day, right? And you can attend and, some sessions or all the sessions and learn a tremendous amount as well, right? So we try to provide these services because for us, it's not just about investing, it's about education, people making educated investment decisions. And then the final thing that I think our customers absolutely love is that our business model, Phil, is that we actually make these investments with our own capital at LinkTo first, right? So we have to be very selective because we're putting our own capital at risk. And then once we've made an investment, we turn around and we approach our community members and we say, hey, do you guys want to participate in these investments, right? So everything you see on that app or on the website, those are investments we've already made. Our capital's already tied up in those names. And if you, for whatever reason, don't agree with us and you don't want to participate, that's cool, but we're holding the bag. So we can't be making silly investments. We can't be putting stuff on there that is, shitty, pardon the term, just because we think we can dump it on some other guy. No, right? That's not the business model. The business model is we're taking that risk.
That's amazing. No, that's so reassuring, I'm sure, to anyone who would. That's one of the first questions I imagine anyone would bring up as they go in. What's your risk profile there? But it's like, this is actually our portfolio, and we're inviting you to be a part of it as actual accredited investors if you meet these guidelines. And that's just awesome. And I want to make sure that the listener knows with LinkTo, it's LINQTO. And you can find them on both the Apple Store and the Google Play Store, regardless of the phone that you have. You can download the app. You can check out the website. And if you end up being courageous enough, you will thank yourself when you get to be a part of these exits and a part of this community where education is taking place. And you get to know Joe better. If you haven't already come to love him, I'm sure you will. Joe, that being said, I have a question here that I've asked everybody that stopped by, and I hope you'll indulge me. But you are welcome to pass. And that is, if you could have invited anybody today to sort of join us in exploring your story, your journey, and what you're doing today with LinkTo, who would it be and why, dead or alive?
My mom. My mom, I lost her back in 2017, but she remains very much part of my life. I think about her all the time. Sometimes I ask her a lot of questions if I'm stumped by something and, that's a life or a big business decision I got to make. And for some reason, she's always there. My mom was not a finance person at all. And she had zero understanding of what I did as an investment banker. She had zero understanding of what I did when I decided to be an entrepreneur, other than to think that I was crazy to leave a great job with lots of pay and lots of prestige to go off on my own. But regardless of her lack of understanding and regardless of her, lack of maybe even belief that it was somehow going to succeed, she never, ever gave up on me. She was always supportive. she was always encouraging. And yeah, just like any great mom, right? She was always full of love for me. So yeah, if there was one person I wish would be here listening to you do this interview, it would be her. And she's here in spirit.
I love that. What's her name?
Gloria,
Gloria. Shout out
Gloria.
to
Yeah,
Gloria. Yeah, big
yeah,
shout out to
yeah.
Gloria. Are you
She was named Gloria because she was born on Christmas Day. Her birthday was
oh
December
wow.
25. Yeah,
And are you a father now yourself?
I am. Heck, I'm a father several times over, dude. I've got six kids.
Oh wow, congratulations, man.
I've got six kids from my first marriage, and unfortunately that didn't work out. We were super young and naive. I married my college sweetheart, so but where things worked out well, we were blessed with the six kids, and and so with my current better half, she brought two kids from her prior marriage, so we have this big extended family of 8 kids.
It sounds beautiful, man.
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
It is beautiful, and it's a
do,
blessing.
do you instill in them the same belief that your mom had, and do you encourage them to be as rebellious as you were?
I don't think I have to encourage them. They sort of have that they have that DNA. So I've got I've got a kid that's an artist. I've got a kid that's the leader of a Cali reggae rock band. Um,
Wow.
Everybody pursuing their path. And what I say to them is that as long as it's an honest piece of work that you're doing, and as long as you give it 100% and you try to be the best you can be, I don't care what it is that you do it.
I love it. There goes the theme of authenticity again. It's such an important cornerstone to everything that you do, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no success without it.
I love that, man. And what a great note to bring our conversation to a close with, as a reminder for entrepreneurs to step back into their authenticity if they feel that they've strayed, or to flaunt it even more if that's really where you already are. And to take a page out of Joe's book and remember that dissent isn't a bad thing. Is if you see a path forward and it's the vision is clear to you, then be authentic to that vision and take a step to the path less traveled, and always with integrity and authenticity, the way Joe does. It's a great reminder. It's something that I'm going to walk away from this conversation with, to step further into who I really am, and remember that that's really where the success and the luck comes from. So Joe,
Yeah.
thank you so much, man, for stopping by. It's been a pleasure.
Great, Phil. I really appreciate it. And I hope this is the first of many conversations. I'd love to, strike up more talks with you, and hopefully forge a friendship. I really appreciated the interview. So yeah, hit me up after your show, and let's be in touch with each other. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay. Everyone, you guys have a nice day.